those are B's, you know, that's from the standard form. So in order to use the quadratic formula, your equation has to be in standard form. So that's why I wrote that again up there. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So then the quadratic formula reads x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay? Now, while you're finishing up getting that in your notes, I know I was trying to tell you a little timeline of when we would be doing what on this, and I had originally said a test by the end of the week, but it's gonna be the beginning of next week.
Oh, okay.
So that's
I
what,
thought you were starting to say like the beginning of this week.
no, we're gonna do this lesson today, and then we're gonna do it again tomorrow, and then you're gonna have your review over it on Wednesday, and then there's one last lesson, we'll do it on Thursday, so then I'll push the test into next week. But this is the final method that we're gonna learn. You know, we've done factoring, we can solve by factoring, we can actually even solve by graphing, because we can find where it crosses the x-axis on the graph. We solve by square roots, we solve by completing the square, and today we're gonna solve by the quadratic formula. Advantages to the quadratic formula is that it will work every time. As long as you can get your equation to be in standard form, and you can, the quadratic formula will work every time. My favorite method is factoring, but everything is not factorable. You know, you have to do the a times c and find the factors that add to b, and that doesn't work every time. So a lot of students usually gravitate towards the quadratic formula because they know it's going to work every time. That's the advantage. The disadvantage, there's a lot more math to do in there, so sometimes it takes a little bit longer. But I mean, as long as you get the right answer, who cares how long it's going to take? Okay, so I have a video first that I'm going to show you that I recorded myself singing the song. We set this formula to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel, and you'll never forget it. I promise. I've got students that are in college algebra right now. Kenyon Clifton just walked down the hall a second ago and heard me playing it and started singing it, and he said he used that on college algebra the first day of school. So I got a video of me just sitting there and I'm playing it on the guitar, just singing it over and over again. It's bad because I think it's never going to stop. It's like I'm just on a loop and I keep going and going and going. So I'll show you that so you can get the tune in your head, and then after that we'll sing it with the ukulele. Okay? So just Pop Goes the Weasel. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, so let's see the video. It's an old video made a long time ago.
2016.
I like that guitar.
Yeah, me too.
X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
You guys sung that like 3 times too many in that one video, didn't it? Alright, so your lyrics for our song are already in your notes. That's your lyrics. So we ready?
No.
Look, there's nobody too cool. Because I mean, I can do it, right? Nobody's too cool. So, Zach, I'm going to expect you to carry it. Alright, you ready? X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That was weak. Let's try that again.
I mean, he was 4 of it.
So sing it loud and proud. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That was better. You got it memorized yet? Let's do it again. Ready? X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. think 2 more times and you're gonna have it.
Okay.
You ready? X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I think that was my best time on the ukulele. I only missed 1 chord that time. All right, one more try. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Woohoo! I mean,
I think we should do an American Idol.
that's what I'm thinking. This is a talent show. We need to sign us up. Alright, so let's see if we can use this dude now. So a couple of things I'm gonna caution you about throughout is the signs, positives or negatives. So when we said negative b, all that means is whatever your b is, you put it with the opposite sign here. So if your b is a positive, you'll make it a negative. If your b is a negative, you'll make it a positive, okay? And then on the b squared, underneath the radical, what do you get anytime you square a number, positive or negative?
Positive.
Positive. So this result here will always have to be positive. A lot of times people will just type like -2 squared in their calculator and put a -4 here. If you're counting on your calculator to square for you, you have to put it in parentheses if it's negative. Y'all, somebody ever taught y'all that before?
Could the B have an I with it?
The B can't have an I with it, but you could end up getting an I underneath here. But just the B. See, for example, I'll have to erase this in just a second, but oops, pen. Wow, good. If we did -2 squared, if we typed that in our calculator like that, that would take 2 and square it, and then assign the negative. And that's not what we want to do. So if we need to square a negative in our calculator, we have to put it in the parentheses. That means do -2 times -2, which will get you the right answer. Okay? Alright, so that's just a side note to keep in mind, and we'll talk about that as we go.
I'm already hearing the song playing.
See,
in my head.
it's good stuff. I mean, you're gonna go home, teach it to your family, and TC's gonna remember it. And it's good stuff. What'd y'all do in math class today? Well, my teacher tried to play the ukulele, and we learned some stupid song. Yep, good stuff. Alright, so our directions say solve. Now, I've told you when we learn all the methods, you can do any way you want, but today we have to do quadratic formula because we have to learn that. So, is this ready to go? No. I told you it needs to be in standard form, and that's not in standard form. So what do we do to get that into standard form?
Set it equal to 0.
Set it equal to 0, how would we do that?
You're going to.
Move the 2 over, subtract your 2 over. So x squared plus 3x minus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, now I'm going to label A, B, and C. If you get comfortable with it and can start skipping this step, you can, but we're going to plug A, B's, and C's in, so I'm going to go ahead and label them. So what is our A in this equation? 1, understood, 1x squared. What's our B? 3. And our C? -2. Okay, so now all we have to do is plug those in for the A, B, and the C in the quadratic formula. So I'm going to have x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, every year people just want to, well, can I just type all that in the calculator? No. First off, you've got an addition problem and a subtraction problem. Your calculator can't do both of those at once. My suggestion is I just try to do it in chunks, and you can use your calculator to help you in those chunks, but I'm going to try to simplify all this first and just simplify as I go. So, keep my nose covered up. I'm looking at, oh, that went too far there, doofus. X equals -3 plus or minus, and now let's work this underneath the radical. So 3 squared is 9. Now I've got a -4, a +1, and a -2. So when I multiply that, is that going to be a positive or a negative?
Negative.
No.
Positive. Good.
Because
Negative.
good. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, and negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8. And then on the bottom, 2 times 1. Okay? So now I can simplify one more thing underneath the radical. 9 plus 8. Alright, so sometimes I'm going to be able to simplify farther, sometimes I'm done. So what do you think about what we have here? Christian might be on to something. He said done. When would I be able to simplify it farther?
If it,
If it were
they're even
divisible by
numbers.
2.
Okay, if I could divide all of those things, yeah. What about if this could break down?
If it were a perfect square.
If it were a perfect square, if it had a perfect square that would go into it, either one, if you could break it down. But 17's prime, so I can't break that down. This doesn't, 3 over 2 doesn't simplify, like you said, so I can't break that down. So that's my answer. Those are my 2 answers, because you got the plus minus sign. Not too bad, huh? Alright, let's try one again. This one says 25x squared minus 18x equals 12x minus 9. The directions say to solve. Today, the only way we're allowed is using the quadratic formula. So is it ready? Can I label an A, B, and C? No. So we gotta do some stuff to get it ready. So I like the way Christian worded it earlier, we gotta make it equal 0, send it equal to 0. So that means I need to get rid of this 12x. So I'm gonna subtract it from itself and its buddy on the other side. Also need to get rid of this 9. It's being subtracted, so I'm gonna add it to itself, and it doesn't have a buddy on the other side, so it's just gonna be stuck on the end, isn't it? Alright, so it gives me 25x squared, negative 18x minus 12x, it's negative 30x, and then plus 9. Now, sometimes when I get some real big numbers like that, I go ahead and see if I can take out a GCF to make it smaller and easier to work with, but there's not a GCF in that. 25 and 30's got one, 30 and 9's got one, but all 3 of them together, nope, too bad, so sad, we're just gonna have some big numbers. So I'm gonna go ahead and label them, so I'll make sure I plug in the right thing. What's our A?
25.
Good, good, good. What's our B?
Negative
Negative 30, good, good, good. And what's our C?
9.
Alright, so you're ready just to plug them in now. X equals negative B, so our B's already negative, so we're gonna make it a positive. Plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A.
You wrote that wrong second.
Alright, so you already simplifying, or are you waiting on me? What are we doing? Negative 30 squared means negative 30 times negative 30, so you know 3 squared is 9, so you just add your couple of zeros, so that's gonna be 900. So I got 30 plus or minus the square root of 900. Now, I got a negative times a positive, so that's gonna be a negative, right? And this looks like this is hard to multiply, and if you need a calculator, it's okay, but it's really not, because negative 4 times 25, 4 times 25 is 100, so you got negative 100 times 9, which is negative 900. Hey, look at that. We scared of some big numbers, but that's fixing to take care of itself, isn't it? 2 times 25 is 50 on the bottom. So 900 minus 900 underneath that radical is 0, and square root of 0 is 0, so that's all nothing, he gone. So you're just looking at x equals 30 over 50, which is 3/5. Good job. I like it a lot. It's funny, we had those big old numbers and we ended up with a number less than 1 for our answer. Okay, I'm gonna let you try one. No, not yet. Let's do one more first. I didn't see that one I wanted to do. Alright, let's do negative x squared plus 4x is equal to 5. Alright, so you talk me through it. Tell me what to do. Good, good, good. Oh, hold on, don't be looking at me, I messed it up. Minus 5. Alright. Can you tell me my A, B, and C now?
A is -1,
Okay,
B is 2,
alright.
C is -5.
Everybody okay with that? If we get those right, then it's just plugging them in. So, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so underneath the radical, you got 4 squared is 16. Okay, now I got negative 4 times negative 1, that's 4. And then 4 times negative 5 is going to make that be a negative 20. Okay, do you see something fishy here?
Yeah, they can be divided.
Before that, you're right, but before that,
That's gonna be negative.
okay, we're going to have a negative underneath the radical, which means our answer is going to be imaginary. So that's x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4. So we got to figure out what the square root of negative 4 is. Well, we know what the square root of 4, that's 2. And what happens when you have a negative underneath there? What do you put with that 2? Okay, good. Okay, so that's almost there, but Christian saw something else that's going to happen. We can reduce all of that. So you could say negative 4 divided by negative 2, just reduce here and here, so that's going to be 2 plus or minus, and so now here the 2's will cancel out and it'll just be I. Cool, cool, cool. Alright, so what I want you to digest about the 3 problems we did so far, this one did not have real solutions, they were imaginary, right? Everybody agree on that? Imaginary because it's got an I, so they're not real. The problem before that, look in your notes, only had one answer. 3/5, we only had one answer. So we've got no real answers on this one, one real answer on the problem before. The first problem we did had 2 real answers. Okay, so if we think about quadratics, what that means, these parabolas, 2 real answers, you can see it cross 2 times. One real answer is just going to hit its head, either up or down. Just touches it one time. No real answers is never going to cross. Okay? And at the end of this lesson today, we're going to learn how we can tell that without solving it all the way, using the part of the quadratic formula. All right, let me let you try one now since we've seen all the different types of answers. All right, got put my marker back up. X squared equals 6x minus 4. So you need to get it into standard form, then you need to label your A, B, and C, and then you need to use the quadratic formula. Okay, all I've done is got mine labeled and set up. So if you're stuck, you might check that. You might also just check to make sure we had that same, we were the same at that spot. Okay, I've simplified it another step, so just check and make sure you're still on the right track. My answer's not finished. Okay, some of y'all probably already finished and passed me, but was everybody okay to this place? Okay, so now I'm seeing is 20 a perfect square, so I'm thinking back to that list of perfect squares we wrote down in our notes last week, and I go down the right side and see if 20 is there. It jumps from 16 to 25, that's why Christian was shaking his head no, it skips 20. But there's a perfect square that will go evenly into 20. Good, 4. So this is gonna be the same as x equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 4 times 5 all over 2. And now the perfect square, I'm going to bring its square root out, and I'm going to leave the prime number under the radical. So we're going to have x equals 6 plus or minus. Right here with 4, the square root of 4 is 2, so I'll bring a 2 out. That 5 has to stay in the radical all over 2. Okay, this is great work, but it's still not finished.
You gotta divide by 2.
Good. Both of these things I can reduce. So 6 divided by 2 is going to make that 3. 2 divided by 2 is just going to make that 1 square root of 5, or you can just write square root of 5. Good job.
I don't know if we can do it because square
Well,
root not being-
you can't in this case, and this is weird for me to say this, Christian, but in this case, it's almost like this square root of 5 is a variable. Like if it said 2x, you could still divide the 2's. So it's the same rule on that. That's a good point by you. I like it. All right. What you think of the quadratic formula? Works every time. The math is not anything that involves rocket science, but sometimes it does take a little bit longer. But, you know, we can take our time if we need to. Now, the part, go ahead, Holly, were you going to ask me something? Oh. The part underneath the radical,
Do we need to write this one?
not yet, because I'm just writing the formula right now and you already have it. But the part underneath the radical is going to determine what I was talking about earlier on how many answers you have. Okay? Because if we get a negative underneath here, we know we're going to have an I, right? If we get, remember that problem that we got nothing? I said he gone. If we get a 0 underneath here, we only had one answer, right? If we just get something here without an I, that means we're going to have our 2 answers. And that's got a term, and this is what Tyler was asking about. This is what we're going to write down. The discriminant is that part just underneath the radical. So if our discriminant answer is greater than 0, that means there are 2 real solutions. If our discriminant number is equal to 0, that means there is 1 real solution. If that discriminant number, the only case left, is less than 0, means it's negative, there are 0 real solutions, which means 2 imaginary, I-M-A-G-I-N, imaginary solutions. Because we're fixing to work through some scenarios now where they don't ask us to actually solve it all the way, they just ask us to tell the solutions. Now, if somebody ever asked you to do that, and you didn't remember all this stuff, you could go ahead and solve it all the way and then look at your solutions and say, well, there's 2 imaginary ones, or whatever. But if we use this and remember this, it cuts down the amount of work that you have to do. I mean, once you understand about square rooting and negative, it's common, it makes some common sense. So it's not like it's too terribly difficult. All right, let's do a problem here with it. You still singing the tune, Tyler?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the directions here say, use the discriminant to determine the number and types of solutions. So, first off, discriminant has to do with quadratic formula. Quadratic formula, we need it in standard form. Are we in standard form? Yeah, so actually we're ready to go this time. So what's our A?
1.
What's our B?
Negative
And our C?
17.
Now, the question said, use the discriminant to determine the number and what kind of solution. So it doesn't actually want the solutions. So I don't have to use the entire formula. I just got to do the b squared minus 4ac. So, negative 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 17.
Wait, it asked for what?
The number of solutions and what kind they are. So that we're gonna be seeing if our discriminant is bigger than 0, smaller than 0, or 0. That's what we're looking for. So -8 squared, that's -8 times -8 is 64. -4 times 1 is -4. And -4 times 17, I think, is -68.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we've got 64 minus 68, which is -4. So we gotta look at that note we just wrote down on the previous page and say, okay, -4, that's smaller than 0. If it's smaller than 0, that means there are 2 imaginary solutions. That's it. Okay, you're out there? Alright. This one says, same directions, use the discriminant to tell me how many solutions and what kind they are. X squared minus 8x plus 16 is equal to 0. So I'm gonna start you and then shut up. Is it in standard form?
Yes.
Yes, so what's my A? Good, B, good, C. So B squared minus 4AC. Finish that up. Okay, did y'all get what I got? Got a discriminant of 0. So what did we say, how many solutions and what kind when our discriminant is 0? One real. That's it. Okay, I did one with you, I did one part way with you, so now this last one you're gonna do all by yourself. We got x squared minus 8x plus what is that? Plus 15 is equal to 0. Y'all notice those 3 problems, the C just went down 1 every time? Alright, so use the discriminant to tell me how many and what kind of solutions. And after that, we'll do one more problem where we solve it all the way, and then we'll be good. We're gonna hit winter time and y'all are gonna be glad we're wearing masks. All of a sudden you got something on your face. Alright, so did I set my discriminant up correctly? Everybody good? So -8 times -8 is 64. Minus 4 times 15, so minus 60. So I got a discriminant of 4. So I go to my notes and I look and see 4 is bigger than 0. So that means I've got what kind and how many?
2 real.
Too real, you got it. Alright, so last thing I want us to do is I'm gonna give us another quadratic and ask you to solve. So we gotta use the whole formula on this one. And then what we'll do tomorrow is spend the day doing nothing but practicing these. So I don't know if I'm making a worksheet or what, but something so you get some good practice on it. Okay, so the one we're gonna do right now says x squared minus 4x minus 5 is equal to 0 in the directions say to solve. Today we have to do the quadratic formula. Just so you know, that one is very easy to factor. And if I were working this on my own on a test, I would factor it. Okay, so the only reason I'm saying that, not to confuse you, but just to keep in mind, sometimes there are other ways. Today's quadratic formula, so let me label I think it's in standard form, is it? Okay, good, so let's label our A, B, and C. What's A? 1, B, good, C. Okay, so we're ready to plug them in. My B is -4, so when I do negative B, that means I'm going to put +4. So x equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Okay, so underneath the radical, let's simplify underneath there first. So -4 squared would be -4 times -4, which would be 16. And then moving over here, -4 times 1 is -4. -4 times -5 is a +20. We okay? Y'all ahead of me? 16 plus 20 is 36. Now this is nice because 36 is a perfect square, so that means we're going to get nice normal numbers. And I gave you a hint that that was going to happen when I said it was factorable. If something's factorable, it's got whole numbers that go into it, right? So you should have kind of been expecting that. The square root of 36 is 6, but a lot of times people get to that point and they just try to reduce it and don't realize they need to work out two problems.
We've already done
We've already done this one? Oh, you're already done.
this. We've already done this one.
I didn't mean to do it again. Oh,
Well,
oh,
no,
I didn't
it's
think we
very
had.
similar though.
yeah. So what people will make a mistake here is they'll just do this. They'll say 4 divided by 2 is 2, 6 divided by 2 is 3. So they'll write 2 plus or minus 3. That is not what happens here. You have two problems to work out. So we're going to do x equals 4 plus 6 and divide it by 2. Then we've got to do x equals 4 minus 6 and divide it by 2. Okay, because there's no radical involved here, we can simplify that and get two good old answers. So in this first one, 4 plus 6 is 10, divided by 2 is 5. Over here, 4 minus 6 is -2. -2 divided by 2 is -1. When we're in chicken dinner. Alright, so I'm going to torture you one more time. We got to close out with our song. Did you mess it up, Christian?
Yeah, I forgot to count 2 negatives, so I got
Oh,
-20.
yeah. That'll mess it up, alright. So that's why, because we did have a 2I one earlier. That's why you
Yeah.
thought that. Alright, you ready? Got your lyrics in front of you?
No.
X equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all